Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the S.O.S. Youth Employment Safety and Power amidst COVID-19 and racism. We are so excited to have our speakers here today to share their experience and expertise on the subject of youth employment. Today's webinar is the 8th in Associated Black Charities S.O.S. series of webinars, which has focused on the racialized disparities in access, resources, and power in the time of COVID-19. ABC knows it is important to highlight the disparities and marginalization that Black communities, workers, businesses, and nonprofits experience historically and now, because we cannot change what we cannot see. I will now pass it on to our facilitator, Albert Phillips, to take the lead and introduce our panelists.
Thank you so much for passing over that mic, John. And trying to look at the time real quick. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're excited to have you embark in this conversation with us today. My name is Albert Phillips, and I am a work-based learning specialist with Baltimore City Public Schools. I'm also a writer and just youth advocate. I've been working with young people for a number of years in fields of workforce development and education. And before we jump into the questions and many of the thoughts that you all have, I do want to allow some time for our panelists to be able to present themselves and tell you a little bit about them. And so I'm going to pass it over to Klause to begin.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Klause Ferrell. So I'm the HeartWorks assistant at With the Hearts job training program. I am also a Youth Empower Society alumni and also an active member of the Youth Action Board for the City of Baltimore. And so I will now be passing that on to Christina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Rawls. I am the Director of Workforce Development and Social Enterprise at Art with a Heart, working with Klause. I am also a board member of the Autism Society Baltimore Chesapeake chapter, and also a member of the Baltimore Digital Equity Coalition and the Baltimore Homeless Youth Initiative. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it along to Nick.
Thanks, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great day today. My name is Nick Brooks. I'm the Workforce Development Coordinator at the Y.E.S Drop-In Center, or Youth Empowered Society. I've spent almost the last 10 years working alongside youth and young adults in Baltimore City in the areas of employment, education, community organizing, and advocacy. At the Y.E.S Drop-In Center, I support youth, staff, and our allies in the fight for permanent affordable housing and racial justice work. I also sit on the board for the Maryland Consumer Rights Coalition, where we were working to bring awareness to local organizing efforts, especially around various economic justice issues, such as student debt, medical debt, and seniors' access to public benefits. I'm really excited for this conversation. Thank you. I'll pass that over to Lee.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lee. Y'all know me. Nothing much to say. I'm currently a supervisor at Coffeehouse, which is part of Project I Can, and also I am on the BHYI, or the Baltimore Homeless Youth Initiative Board. So that's it.
Thanks, Lee. We're going to pass it over to Taylor so you can introduce yourself as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor, and I'm 18. I am a studio apprentice at BYA, also known as Baltimore Youth Arts. And that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for introducing yourself, Taylor, and for the rest of our panelists. And for everybody tuning in, as you can see, we have a wonderful panel here of people working in the community. We have young people, we have workforce practitioners, we have workforce directors. We just have some strong people here on our panel. Before we jump into this conversation, I do just want to frame it by reading a little bit of a passage from the conclusion of my new book, actually, shameless plug, Y'all Hiring, a Black Teens Guide to Navigating Employment, just to help, again, frame this conversation. So I'll just read a little bit of it. So it says, I'll be real with you. The world, including the American job market, is unbalanced in its current construction, and it's not set up for the majority of non-white people to thrive. COVID-19 magnified the workplace inequities that plague employees of color especially low-wage workers. I know a number of people who were terminated from their jobs or alternatively had to risk their lives in order to travel to workplaces where there were confirmed COVID-19 cases. When it comes to employment, millions of people do not have the option to telework or even take off when they are ill. This is not the reality for all, though. In fact, according to the Institute for Policy Studies, since mid-March, while 40 million Americans filed for unemployment, US billionaires had a wealth increase of $584 billion. Low-wage workers of color are the least valued employees in this country. It hurts, and I hate even having to write these words. It has been this way for some time, though. Some 50 years ago, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spent the last days of his life working on behalf of Black workers facing wage discrimination. Anti-Blackness and other forms of discrimination in the workplace are real. Through policy and practice, they are as American as apple pie. So that's a little bit I wanted to read from the book in order just to frame this important conversation. And I'm glad that you all again are here with us in order to embark on the conversation. So as John mentioned earlier, the topic of this webinar is S.O.S, Youth Employment, Safety, and Power amidst COVID-19 and racism. And so we're going to start with just a few questions for everyone. We'll have questions for our young people as well as the other practitioners that are on the call, but we also want to encourage you all who are viewing to ask questions. There's a Q&A box option that you have if you have questions for our panelists as well. So feel free to utilize that, and we'll keep our eyes on it. So the first question that I have is open to everyone, but we'll specifically start with Klause. And so what are some of the biggest barriers that you or your employer or organizations that you're a part of have been facing when it comes to COVID and employment?
So in my time navigating like the new world amongst, you know, like the pandemic and COVID-19 and things of that nature, I found that a common trait that individuals are suffering from, be it youth, be it, you know, adults, be it working individuals, non-working individuals, whatever may have you, that mental health is a big barrier that we're all facing and that we're all, you know, smacking against. It goes down to whether or not like you have the financials to be able to take care of yourself, whether or not you have the necessities of an everyday to be able to sustain yourself or those that you support, that you won't be able to go far or do many of these things without your mentality intact and healthy. And with that going into with being able to take care of yourself financially, that also has a really big play in it. And taking care of yourself holistically also has that value within it. And without proper coping mechanisms or without proper tactics to take care of yourself mentally, then therefore there is a possible chance for everything to fall apart that you have been working to build or that you've been accumulating for yourself to build to prosper. So that's one of the biggest barriers that I find as a common trait within my communities, within myself, and within a lot of the individuals that I associate with today.
Thank you for mentioning that, Klause. Mental health is very important in our community. It has been for a long time. So we'll pass it over to Christina.
Thank you. Actually, mental health is a great segue for the barriers that Art with a Heart is facing. A lot of our values center around community engagement and creating safe spaces for people that we work with. And a lot of that we hear from our volunteers and the youth that we work with is that they miss gathering in our spaces and our programs. And even though we were able to bring our programs into the virtual space, there really isn't a replacement for that kind of community engagement for really people's mental health and that kind of coping mechanism. So that's really a big part of what we do. And while we are able to still have that availability in the virtual realm, I think that there's still that missing piece. Alongside with the virtual space is access to devices and internet connection. Being a part of the Baltimore Digital Equity Coalition has really opened up my eyes to the racial divide there, and how there's not that access to the equitable access to technology is huge, and that gap is huge. So even though I think that we've done a really good job of really collecting devices and getting connectivity to people, I know that we are missing individuals in that sphere. And then also unemployment benefits right now, how much of a struggle that was for many people in trying to get those, and even benefits related to COVID-19, knowing the struggles of many people trying to get those, and also even with homelessness, of trying to acquire safe spaces, safe living spaces, has been very trying right now.
Yeah, the funding has been huge. I know even for businesses trying to get funding throughout the city, it's been a struggle for a lot of folks. The same question, and let me know if you need me to repeat it, but I'm gonna pass it over to Taylor with the same question. Taylor, you there with us? You want me to repeat?
Yeah. No, I know the question. So from what Klaus and Christina said, I also agree. Mental health is like a big part of life, period, too, though. So even with COVID-19, it's just like, even though people could get benefits, but they give benefits to the wrong people. So it's just like they give benefits to people that have opportunities already, not the people that need the opportunities. So the government doesn't really pay attention to who needs what. They see people like applying for stuff, and they just automatically just give it out because it's just like fraud. Like they just say they need it, but they don't really need it. And the people that actually needs it doesn't have it because it's already taken already. That's how I feel about it. And it's just, since I struggle with mental health too, I will understand where that come from, because it's really not easy, especially in a time like this where you gotta be separate from everybody. So it's just like, for me, being alone is like, it really triggers my separation issues, and I don't like being alone. So it's just like, for the fact that we have to be alone now, it's hard. It's way harder than it usually is. Yeah.
Thank you for being transparent with that. I hear that a lot of people are displaying more anxiety. I've even heard about domestic violence going up because so many people are kind of trapped in their homes and don't have the ability to get some of the resources and supports that they need. But I do want to pass it over to Lee so that you can share from your perspective.
Do you mind repeating the question for me again? That way I can get an understanding, please.
Absolutely, that's no problem. So the question is, what are some of the biggest barriers that you or your employer or organization face during COVID?
Ooh, my barriers, I feel, is when your employer, you have to work to get a certain number of hours. Sometimes your hours get cut off, but at the same time, you're trying to make up the hours just because you don't have enough money and able to cover whatever you need. So for barriers, I feel like I have PTSD, and sometimes I get a little crazy, but at the same time, it don't really affect me. I just don't go in the dark a lot. So
Thank you for that, Lee. I appreciate that. So that's our round of questions that we have for everyone. We're going to actually shift a little bit to questions that are specifically for our young people, because we believe and we know that their voices are extremely important in this conversation. And too often we have adults that speak on behalf of young people without young people actually being present. So I'm happy to have you all here. So the first question that I have is, we talked about communities and people not having access to different resources and supports that they need during this time when it's extremely critical. But I'm curious from you all, as young people, as employees, as people who are part of different organizations, what has worked as far as support from these different organizations or even your job? And what are some things that you feel like can work better, or these organizations and jobs can do better to support you? And we'll start up that question with Klause again.
I do appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. So necessarily, programs all around our communities are striving to do the very best that can be done to assist and support the youth, be it sheltering them, feeding them, or handing them opportunities for finances. All of it is only a step to what we ultimately want in the future. Programs necessarily also don't have the ability to do as much as they want versus working to their capacity to address the needs of our youth and still maintain a normal work ethic where everyone isn't stretched for miles or stressed out in order to make ends meet for others, or at least even themselves. Organizations do have cornerstones of necessities met in different spectrums, yet there isn't a one-stop take care of everything holistically program. That alone is something to be understood, as the demand there would be almost insurmountable. Paying attention to the many aspects of a youth's circumstances and current state of being is important to understand what can be done to give them the positive push for wanting better. In my opinion, it isn't downplayed, but it could be better interpreted that youth require mental health services, touching back on what I said before. The holistic value of any individual isn't truly grasped until they are holistically taken care of. I found it happens more oftentimes than not that finding a job and procuring finances to then build a foundation from nothing is a feat within itself. But what good is that, although when the scars on the inside aren't healed or aren't being validated or acknowledged or being worked on in any sort of shape or form? And all of that can give way to youth falling back into negative vices or falling into a depressive state with no coping methods. And there is an opportunity to lose it all for, with negative consequences from these circumstances. And that's a consequence that nobody necessarily has time for, especially now in a time of the pandemic and where resources and services are scarce as it is. And so necessarily, I speak from a personal point when I say these things. As a youth with 10 years lived experience, I've battled with the brutal beast that is, like mental health, the lack of services, the lack of coping mechanisms, things like that. And I've also had to deal with the hardships of living on a day-to-day basis, trying to survive, trying to figure out a place to sleep and things like that. All of that isn't tough. I mean, it's not easy. And yet the tougher part is trying to make sure that you yourself can hang on to yourself every day. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard not to lose yourself in the stress and anxiety of the things that you have to face on a day-to-day basis. And allowing those things that are oppressing you to define you is a really easy thing to have happen. It takes a very strong, resilient individual, somebody who wants more than what they already have, in order to face these adversities and to be able to overcome them and persevere. And myself, I've found it that I have that resiliency, I have that vigilance, I have that persistency, I have that tenacity, which is the reason why I am here in the capacity that I am here today. I've found it that through my years, that regardless of what I can or have done, it's nothing if I don't take care of myself in an all-around holistic value. And that's where I necessarily was able to find I was able to find like that ledge that I was able to hold on to, and I was able to like climb out of a hole of disparity. You know what I mean? I was able to get myself together and move to a better place.
Oh, that's a dope story, man. I definitely appreciate you sharing that. Taylor, we're gonna pass it over to you with the same question.
Could you repeat the question?
Absolutely. So when we think about when we talked a little bit earlier about the lack of resources and supports for people during a pandemic, but I want to think about specifically you as young people. Would have either employers or organizations done well to support you, and then what are some things that you feel like they can do better in order to support you?
Okay, thank you. And I feel like some employers really, they lay off the younger people. Like, I feel like they don't pay us enough attention because they want people with experience. So it's just basically like, if an older person had more experience with dealing with something like COVID before, it's just like they would look over us, or they would let us go to keep them. And they wouldn't even think about how that would affect us, because since we so young, they would think that we would have it all together anyway. So I feel like, me personally, even though I got benefits when I was out of a job because of COVID, even though I had it, a lot of people didn't have it. So it's them looking past the people that actually need it. And they don't actually pay attention to what that could do. Like, they don't, it's just, it's hard to explain. Wait. They don't pay it no mind about what they letting go. Like, if they discriminate against young people like that, they don't care. It's just like another day for them. And they don't think about anybody else except themselves when they do it. Like, COVID literally stopped everybody's lives. Literally, we went on quarantine. Nobody could work really. Everybody was getting fired. And it was just like another day in a park for them, because it's just like an everyday thing for them. They fire a bunch of people at the same time. It don't affect nobody but them, because at the end of the day, they running out of people to work for them. And me personally, even though I got unemployment because I got fired, I really didn't understand it at that time. But I couldn't say anything else. That's all I could do, is just keep going forward. And for the people that actually struggle with stuff like this, it's hard, because you don't actually know when things are gonna get better. Actually, you really gotta pray for the next day. And I feel like that with everybody. Like, even though I know, and older people really do. Not to say older people, I know everybody in here is older than me, but not to say it like that. But some people really do down talk younger people, youth. And it's just like, they feel like we can't do what the older people can do, when that's totally not true. Not saying y'all can't do a lot too, but we can do exactly the same thing y'all do. We just younger. But I feel like with employers, that go right past everybody's head, because they only look at our age first. They look at our age and they think we like irresponsible or something, when it's not always the case. One person could affect everybody else's decisions on you. And I really don't appreciate that a lot. That's really weird.
Taylor,
That's it.
Taylor, I think you made a lot of really, really strong points there. Especially if there are any employers listening, like I hope that you really absorb the words that she shared, especially when it comes to us criticizing youth without putting it into context, right? Like, we don't talk about the state of the city. We don't talk about the inequities that our young people are facing every day, but we simply like cast them out at times and see them as like the scorn of the earth, when we really should be thinking about like how did our situation get to this way, and what can we do to help change some of these conditions? So the same question, Lee, we're going to pass it over to you, so just so we can get your response to it.
This question is, I'm going to piggyback what Taylor just mentioned earlier about barriers. When I was working in the Sheraton, I had only a year, and when the pandemic hit, I didn't know if I was going to be laid off or not. Which unfortunately, I got laid off at that time. And when you get the unemployment benefits, it sucks though, but it really sucks to get unemployment benefits, but you get a job at the same time and try to make up for it, it quite works out in your favor, but it doesn't work out to what the word trying to say here. Never mind about that. So the point is, if you can't get unemployment benefits and the government's not providing them, then what else we can do? What else? I mean, there's so much resources that can be used, but during this pandemic, you can't really do it in person because you may be in contact with another person. Maybe that person may be high risk due to COVID. Maybe that person may be tested positive. We don't know. So think about it. So think about that for a while.
Thanks a lot for that, Lee. I always appreciate your perspective. We're gonna actually shift back a little bit because I forgot my brother, and I would definitely want to hear his thoughts when it comes to the first question. So I'm gonna shift it over to Nick.
Thanks, Albert. No worries. And just want to thank and lift up the words so far from Klaus, Taylor, and Lee. Your words are just ringing so true, and just really appreciate everything that you're saying, especially to Lee's point. What else can we do? You know, I've heard folks talk about PTSD, about anxiety, about depression, about loneliness and abandonment. And we know that these issues existed long before COVID-19, and that we as a society, we're not dealing great with mental health stigma, with providing mental health services, especially for young Black youth, especially in Baltimore City. So in a lot of ways, my perspective, and the Y.E.S Drop-In Center is a drop-in center for young people under the age of 25 experiencing homelessness. From my perspective, the COVID-19 pandemic has been a stress test that our society has not passed in any way. So many of the issues that folks have lifted up, because they were prevalent even before this year, they've only been exacerbated more and more. So just to give a little bit of context about that, Christina and I run a job program together along with Klaus and along with a great team that's been assembled. This summer, we ran 8 weeks of that job program, followed by another 8 weeks of that job program in rapid succession to try to create more safe spaces for young people. As was alluded before, there's been a lack of safe spaces, a lack of community because folks can't gather together. Community and safe spaces has been the lifeblood of young people and a thriving community for forever. So in the absence of that, we've had to be incredibly resilient, and we've asked a lot of our community, and in many ways, the leadership and the government and the financial incentives that folks have alluded to just have not been there. So for example, when we started this cohort over the summer, 75% of the folks in the cohort were employed and lost their employment because of COVID-19. So folks that had been working tirelessly to save money, to get housing, to find stability, had all of that pulled out. And to Lee's point, having unemployment benefits, having a stimulus check, maybe two, is not nearly enough. And work and community does something to us that can't be replaced by those kind of financial short-sighted benefits. They needed to be much more long-term. They needed to be much more connected towards holistic community-based supports. So thinking about Baltimore City, in Baltimore City, over 12,000 people are experiencing homelessness. We have one of the highest eviction rates in the entire city, or the entire country. Well more than 3,000 youth are experiencing homelessness every day, and we don't have the necessary system in place to support that. So there's a great report out there from Charm City Care Connection and the Y.E.S Drop-In Center that I would love for folks to check out, just to see what has happened so far. For example, we worked together to help get 55 young people into hotels that were experiencing homelessness. However, we know that the support services were not prevalent because there just wasn't enough economic support coming from the federal government and the state government to the city and to organizations to support that many people in hotels. Now, if I just said 55 young people were put up in hotels, but well over 3,000 are experiencing homelessness, there's a massive disconnect going on in our society. So when we also look at the wage gap that we see within young people, if folks look at the ALICE report coming from the United Way, it states that young people need to make $16 an hour at a 40-hour-a-week job to maintain a survival basic necessity, just a survival budget. So I don't know many places that are hiring young people at $16 an hour for more than 40 hours a week. And the folks that are, there are certainly a number of safety risks and just general dangers to working in some of those places. We all know about the Amazon distribution warehouse. We know that that's a place that notoriously is always hiring. However, many of those shifts are over 12 hours, which creates an undue hardship for childcare and transportation. We know that Amazon itself, we've seen their CEO, as Albert mentioned earlier, really extend that wealth gap from CEO to workers. And we haven't seen any of that wealth kind of trickle down to the people that are working there. So there's not a whole lot of places that folks can work. And when you see those types of jobs, or janitorial jobs or cashier jobs or retail jobs, they're low paying, they're essential workers, and folks are putting themselves in danger to go into those situations. There's not enough PPE, there's not enough social distancing, there's just not enough safety. So we're putting young people who have the aforementioned barriers, who are absolutely doing way more than they should have to, and then our employment community and our workforce sector is just generally dropping the ball. So it's a bleak outlook, and we certainly need more unity now than ever. And we need to just listen to young people and what they're saying. So I thank you all so much for speaking up on what you're saying today.
Key quote from that: we need unity now more than ever. And speaking about Amazon, I mean, I literally had a family member who, it's a little bit of what I mentioned in my book earlier, is that, you know, he's trying to pay bills. He wants to go to work. He wants to support himself and his family. And, you know, he got a call and was like, hey, there were, you know, multiple confirmed cases here. He's like, I need to go to work, right? Like, I still need to make money. I still need to pay my bills. I still need to support my family. And it just became a tough decision. And it got to a point where I didn't really know what to say, right? Because, like, you tell somebody to just go to work after they hit his information, or do you say, hey, maybe you shouldn't go to work when they need that money to support their family? So it put a lot of people in just a lot of unfortunate situations, because, like I mentioned earlier, like, everybody doesn't have the ability to telework and just, like, log into their computers and work. People have to physically go in, and they physically have to do their jobs in that way. So it just becomes very unfortunate. But just to backtrack a little bit, in thinking about this situation, I think that one of the kind of offsprings of it is that it forced people to become more communal in a way. I'm not trying to say everybody is all of a sudden working together now, but I think a lot of people had a spark and started to get a little bit more serious about, you know, how can we really be a more connected community? And so I want to shift the question back to our young people. When you think about your community, you think about your family and even yourself, what are some ways that you maybe had to support others or even receive support from other people because you needed more help during this time? So I would love for y'all just to speak to that. So I'll pass it over to Klause.
Thank you again. So this is actually a question that's super near to me and is dear to me because of the purpose that I have that goes along with it. So as far as community supporting me during this time or family supporting me, that's a line where necessarily like I play on the other side. I'm not the individual who's receiving support. I am the supporter. I am the guardian, you know what I mean? I take care of a family. I am, I'm a single father. I am the community head of my household and of my child's life. I am a parent and, I have a 5-year-old little girl. She's that is everything near and dear to me. When I tell you that she is the most important thing in my life, she is absolutely the most important thing that I have. And so with all that being said, so I am the supporter, and that has been my biggest struggle necessarily navigating throughout COVID-19. Throughout the entirety of this year, figuring out ways how to support myself and my child together and holistically, once again, using that word because that word is super important here. That's been my biggest struggle throughout the entirety of this year. The financial struggle that goes with that, you know what I mean? The struggle with making decisions based on the current state of the world and deciding whether or not my kid can go to a park or not, like that by itself gives off like its own reality, like it gives its own smack of reality, you know what I mean? When you have to think about whether or not like you can even allow your child to like go out to the ice cream truck in the summertime, you know what I mean? Like I can't let my kid go out there. They might, somebody might have COVID-19 or something like that, you know what I mean? And that's something so menial, something so small during, like a summer afternoon, but yet that can change your entire life in an instant. That is something that's almost unfathomable if we weren't living it. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure 2 years ago that would have never been a thought in our mind that going out to an ice cream truck could possibly end your entire family or bloodline. We never would have thought about that. And that's something that we have to think about nowadays, whether or not, going, taking how many people to the grocery store or going out to McDonald's, something so small as that is now a struggle to make decisions based off of what we're going through today. And so like I have to be conscious with every decision that I make because every decision affects my family. And so I have to think for two people rather than just simply myself. And I faced a multitude of challenges, be it, for my mental health, making sure the groceries are in the house, even supplying gifts for my daughter's birthday, let alone like the absolute like necessities that I have to take care of every day, making sure we have toiletries, making sure that there's, there's like simple stuff in the house that's necessary. You know what I mean? Like regardless of what it is, like being a provider is probably the toughest part that I have faced throughout the entirety of this year. Like, don't get me wrong, like navigating and adapting to living in this new world is tough by itself, and that by itself is hard. But like I said, there is nothing that even matches close to being that of a supporter or a provider for a family. And I can only imagine what it's like to be a provider for a community. You know what I'm saying? Like these are individuals that are looking far beyond than just their immediate family, which they are still keeping in mind in the front of their brains. You know what I mean? These are people that are stretching themselves over to youth that are currently going through the deeper circumstances of the pandemic, or that are suffering deeper circumstances due to their life or whatever may have you, whatever they're going through. This spectrum of being a provider is like, I think that this is like the truest and the most trying part of surviving. And honestly, like with how everything is going today, that's what we're all doing necessarily. We're all surviving. And as much as I've spent my life surviving, I know what it looks like. And like, this is exactly what it looks like. And to be an individual who wants to give more to individuals more than yourself or to your immediate family, like, that's very selfless, and that's a very brave thing to do, and that is such a dangerous thing to do altogether too. And my heart goes out to the individuals who do that. You know, a shout out to all the staff at Y.E.S, to hear our with our heart. We all work very hard to make sure that we can give more than what, you know, give more than just ourselves and the ones that, you know, that we hold closest. We want to make sure that we can spread that to everyone, and everyone, to make sure that they can at least be there as a support system for everyone. And once again, that is the toughest part that I feel that we've all been facing here. And yet that's something that we've all been doing tirelessly, selflessly, and diligently and vigilantly. And I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. And like, that's just something I necessarily wanted to highlight the most in my portion.
Definitely powerful, especially when you talk about, you know, being a provider and trying to live a life that's kind of unfathomable, you know, for most of us prior to 2020. Taylor, I just want to pass it over to you as well with the same question.
So with community support, so when I was attending BYA, it was like an after school thing. And as soon as COVID hit, we went on quarantine, and they would help. Like, they would send out other stuff like supplies and stuff that we would need, so that we wouldn't have to come down there and actually like be around each other, just in case one of us had it or anybody else had it, even them. So they helped so that we wouldn't have to like be at risk for getting sick or anything, because some people got health problems, and just to make sure that don't happen, it was like they was just helping make it better. But I'm not a supporter. I don't have kids, and I live with my mom because I'm just getting grown. So that's really not a problem for me. But I take care of myself, so I would still need a job and all that. So it's good that we could still work, but we work virtually.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a blessing for a lot of folks to be able to work from their computers or, you know, whatever technology that they have. Lee, shifting it over to you to close out for this question. What are your thoughts?
Okay. So I'm not a provider. My family is most important to me, and the whole community is very important to me. But like I said earlier, restrictions have been put in place. Let's say if I'm going out to a bar and I may be contracted with the virus. I don't know who's going to be in contact with. I don't know who or what or whatever they're doing. But most obviously, it's really important to protect yourself, and just for the sake of others, you gotta protect everybody, because safety comes important. And I do understand what Klause is saying, but I'm gonna add on what you're saying as well. If a kid is contracted with COVID right now, that kid could be in the ICU, or that kid could die because of the virus. So all we need to do is just keep looking out for each other. That's it. And that doesn't mean you can just go out to bars. It doesn't mean you can go to clubs, or you can go to a restaurant. You can't just do that. I mean, I understand restaurants are opening right now, but they've been closing due to COVID. So if a person is going to a restaurant or a grocery store, actually just go there. Just get whatever you need and just go. You don't need to be in the store for too long. And people not practicing social distancing, that's another problem, because that comes with the exposure of the virus as well too. So just a random thought.
Thank you for that, and thank you for pushing folks to, enforce those guidelines and that were put in place to help protect people. So I do want to shift to our workforce providers who are here with Christina and Nick. So I know oftentimes as a workforce provider, you're kind of like the middle person between our young people and employers. So you probably have built up a list of various employers who you work with on a regular basis, and then obviously you have young people in your organization who you support in a myriad of ways. So in that role and in that position, what do you see as some of the issues that you might have with employers in trying to get employment opportunities for young people? And I guess we can start with Nick. Is that fine?
Sure. Thank you, Albert. It's a super important question, and someone actually put into the chat. I noticed that there was a question around, how can they reach out to employers and impress upon them the importance of hiring young people and that youth are employable. Talking about hearing an employer assuming that a younger candidate didn't really need a job. That they must not have that much going on in their life, that they really need this job compared to an older candidate. So I really do think that there is a public awareness effort that we all need to be involved in, an initiative that similar to Each One Teach One, each one stand up for one. Wherever we have ties, wherever we have partnerships, wherever we shop, wherever we spend money, we should be trying to fill that air with the conversation around youth employment. Baltimore is a city that every single summer comes together and the entire business community puts together opportunities for over 10,000 young people through Youth Works. However, that's just a summer employment program. It's not year round. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of educating employers in their role, right? Like we I think are past the point of asking for corporate responsibility, and now we're seeing corporate culpability within a system of class warfare. So if you know the economic situation that young people are in and that the people in your city are in, and you're only willing to offer 28 hours a week at $12 an hour, and you know that someone's going to have to get a second job and they're going to have to get on a transportation system that has a national D ranking. Look at the Central Maryland Transportation Alliance report card. Our transportation system is failing us, and our young people especially. So if you're somebody that has to go to multiple jobs, you have childcare responsibilities, you have all of these different responsibilities. And to Klause's point, you've been trying to do this for so long. There's such a disconnect for employers to think, do young people really need these opportunities? So for us, we of course are trying to garner support and partnerships. And like you said, Albert, we all sort of have that list in our pocket of employers that we can go to. But in COVID, some of those businesses have shut down. Some of those opportunities have dried up, and we really haven't seen a response, right? So I would love to see a conversation where employers had all of this information and we're looking at almost like a budget that we're seeing just does not line up for people, and could start to think about what more can we do here? Because I think we're getting into a new realm of we have to try very radical things. So at the Y.E.S Drop-In Center, we've been doing a lot to connect young people to employment, but now we've also been doing a whole lot to fundraise and be able to pay people for their time to commit to positive strengthening opportunities. So if you commit to a webinar for your development, we're paying people to do that. And I think what we're trying to do is get to a place where we're actually giving economic stimuluses. We're giving universal basic income to young people experiencing homelessness, because without that, we're going to see a catastrophic effect on our society. So we have to just stand up and see this isn't working, and we need to try incredibly new and inventive ideas with our business partners, with the young people around us, lifting up their voices to speak the truth to the real situation, rather than pretending that things are okay, it's business as usual, and we're going to be paying for these inequalities for a long time to come if we can't solve them soon.
And just to add to what Nick has already said, it is about that communication of like this deficit of resources and support, and not a deficit of talent and job readiness, because it is about the youth, the employees running into these issues that have to do with the inequities in our systems, right? Usually it's lateness because of transportation, or how are we expected to actually be employed and coming to jobs on time if we aren't getting our basic needs met, right? So even somebody, I know we're answering questions like ahead of time, but this is like actually a part of our discussion, right? John even asked about like, we're set up to say that, these things solutions to hunger and housing and sickness and everything are, it's said that, capitalism and having a job are supposed to answer those questions. And it really shouldn't be that way. And I think that that's really also like the messaging that we as practitioners are telling employers, as well as that we don't have these systems in place in order to really like have those resources and supports, right? So we shouldn't be punishing our youth for that. And then the other thing is that I think with just our workforce programs, Nick and I think make a really great team for that. We also provide some of those resources as well. So whether it's job training, whether it's housing, whether it's, bus tokens, transportation, food resources, things along those lines, we communicate that we can help with those supports and resources, not only to our youth participants, but also to employers as well in our relationships. So if there is something where we're finding that a barrier is preventing someone from really shining, there's a way to communicate and make that connection happen. So that's another way that we can reduce those barriers. And then the other thing I wanted to mention too is going back to the points about how, going back to Albert's conclusion in his book about how a lot of the jobs that are available are low wage jobs and unsafe jobs. And then also going back to Taylor's point about giving, kind of killing that stigma on youth not needing jobs or youth not knowing enough. Trying to educate employers and also having quality jobs available to youth. I've had employers say that they feel it's risky to employ youth, and we really need to kill that stigma and have quality jobs, just like what Nick was saying, that, a survival wage, we need to have living wages for our youth, and we really need to stop with that language.
Yeah, thank you for that, Christina. And if I could just piggyback that just for 1 second, I think just thinking about best practices that can be lifted up sort of immediately. We have some partners, Starbucks, for example, does an incredible job when they onboard people of matching them with someone that's their age, that has a shared identity, that comes with the most sort of peer experience to the person being hired, so that there's a closeness when a person comes on board, so that the supervising team and the community at work has an understanding of what that person might be going to, because they now have a mentor and they have a little bit more safety. Art with a Heart and Y.E.S have also followed that model. Many other organizations we know lifting up peer positions is really important. But what if we could do that more? You know, what if everybody on this call looked around their office and looked at their team and said, you know, what can we do to fundraise to get more young people into these positions so that we can create more of a pipeline into leadership, so that we're not into the situation where there's always some sort of divide, right? Because we know that the disparities that we've seen have been worsening over time, especially when we look at Black and Brown communities, and especially when we look at Black workers and just the disparities between opportunities. We represent a community that understands that, you know, and I think that we can really be the community that lifts that up and spreads that and shows some best practices. Because back to Starbucks, I remember talking to a district manager that could demonstrate statistically that it was more beneficial to hire a young employee from Baltimore City that was connected with a nonprofit than it was hiring someone out in the county that was going to college. That they saw better retention, they saw better performance, they saw better all around efforts. And it kind of defies the stigma that we have that young people, when they are facing things like, you know, poverty or being cash poor, show up in a less than way. And that's just never been true. And we've got to erase that stigma at every opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a huge stigma. As you both stated, that still exists, that's still very prevalent. And we have to continue to remind ourselves and reinforce the fact that when our young people are properly supported in all facets of their life, then they can perform at a high level. And I think that's very true. So I do want to just ask one more question to our two workforce providers, and then we'll get into some of the Q&A questions. So folks, continue to put the questions that you have. A few people have submitted questions into the Q&A, put them there, and we'll try to jump into them right after this question. So the next question that I have for you both, and you both kind of alluded to it a little bit, but you know, we have a lot of important people who are tuning in today to this webinar, right? Like we have people who may be funders, they may be policymakers, people working for other workforce development programs, or people that just have major connections to folks who can really make things change. So I'm curious, and I would love for you to just explicitly state to our audience, what are the things that you need within your organization to be able to do your work at a higher level? So either one of you can jump into that.
Well, firstly, I wanted to sort of talk about like having safe spaces and discussions like what we have here going on right now to have these conversations. And I wanted to actually uplift what Associated Black Charities has been doing, including their community of practice convenings that they've been having this past year, and really before this, sort of like talking about identifying and moving away from white dominant culture in workforce development programs, and also talking about the fine line between professionalism and white supremacy. I have been attending these, other organizations I've been working with have been attending these and having those tough conversations. And I really think it really is something that not only helps our conversations with employers, making sure that we have the right tools to make these things happen, but also help work within our own organizations to be better, and to really recognize the racial disparities and how white supremacy really just so invasive in our own practices, and just is really just in workforce culture in general. So I just want to thank Associated Black Charities to be really being on the forefront of that, and that those trainings are just so important to the work that we do. And I would love to see more of that. And then just again, just to reinforce again, quality jobs, like over and over and over again. I can't say that enough, quality jobs for our youth. And then flexible funding, which I'm going to just pass along to Nick to talk about.
Yeah, thank you for that, Christina. And to piggyback two of those thoughts before I get to flexible funding, the Associated Black Charities Community of Practice, it's an incredible opportunity to develop those tools to have these difficult conversations within our own organizations and within our own sphere. And that practice has been growing, it's been growing, but the more people that come to it, the closer we get to hitting critical mass on some of these conversations, the closer that we'll be to actually moving the meter to a place that we feel that. So I want to plug again the policy recommendations on the second page of the report that Charm City Care Connection and Y.E.S put out. John put it into the chat comments. There's conversations in there about how we can pressure the mayor's office to prioritize things like housing is a human right and housing first opportunities. Things like putting more money towards permanent affordable housing and permanent supportive housing. Also talking about pressuring libraries and schools to put more resources out there for universal free access to Wi-Fi. And that digital divide that we have talked about, now that we're in this COVID world that everyone has to work remotely, it's very, very difficult to do anything if you don't have that access. Folks were regularly going to the library for that access, just in the same way that folks are regularly going to hotels and we're going to restaurants and we're utilizing laboratories and restrooms for hygiene. All these options are off the table right now for many people. So I think we really have to start thinking about how do we listen to the experts that have been saying these are the things that are needed and putting things together. And of course, like Christina mentioned, flexible funding is so important. If you ask any community-based nonprofit, it is very, very difficult to manage a budget throughout the year as needs and things are evolving. We saw much more flexible funding in response to COVID-19. And my hope is that everyone in the funding community can sort of hear that message and have that same sense of urgency. It shouldn't take a global pandemic for us to have the same urgency when Baltimore has been facing an epidemic of ethical proportions for decades and generations.
Definitely powerful, man. I remember hearing about, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but I met with him maybe a couple of months ago, and he was talking about how he installed like Wi-Fi on top of a building in Sandtown. And I'm like, man, like we have to do all of this in order for people just to simply like get internet. Like it should, like you said, it should be a basic human right, right? Like it should be something that we all have access to, and not just any crappy internet, right? Like we don't want the dial-up stuff. We want the real stuff. We want the internet that's fast, that's able to open up applications that we need, so that our grandparents can telework. Or even take their appointments if needed, right? Like we want to be able to do all of this stuff with our technology. So I'm going to shift it. Oh, before I shift it, since we're showing the ABC love, I got to show some ABC love myself. I definitely appreciated going through the board pipeline program. If you all have not heard of it, or if you're unaware, unfamiliar, definitely check out that website. I was able to connect and learn about being a board member, but also join a couple of boards. So definitely a valuable process. I'm just looking real quick at our Q&A. We have a question for I think this is for our young people. I would love to get your response on it. So the question is, what are the most effective ways to reach young people during this pandemic? Is it social media? If so, which platforms and mechanisms would you suggest? Klaus, you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, sure, I don't mind. So social media is obviously super prominent in today's like youth culture and things like that. Like social media is probably the most attention grabbing, the most common and ethical way to get through to a youth. You know what I mean? Be it through Facebook groups, like things like Facebook. The things that I know that are most engaged are what Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat, I believe. I'm not quite aware if Twitter is is essential to the youth population. I speak like I'm an older individual, but I'm not. I swear, I just don't use social media like that. But I am very aware that, like, you know, that like that's like a huge portion of today's youth, and like their abilities to communicate with one another and things of that nature. So I'd say like definitely like those three platforms that I just mentioned: Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. And in one functionality, I would say probably the biggest part is maybe like a Facebook group, you know what I mean? Like definitely like trying to get in contact like through like I guess meeting in person is hard already as it is. I was, you know, like getting at least like a rundown of what's going on. I mean, in order to like start recruiting individuals, if you will, I guess is like, I don't know, like emails or something like that. But then I guess create a Facebook group in order to create a bigger community, in order to get everybody in according to a mission or whatever that whatever may have you plan that you may have in mind. But yeah, that's the biggest idea that I've got, to be honest with you. I'm not the social media guru, I'll tell you that.
Klaus, you sure I haven't seen you on TikTok doing one of the dances?
You're funny.
Taylor, I'm gonna pass it over to you. What social media platforms or what ways in general do you think you know, people can use in order to reach young people?
I think Twitter and Instagram is the biggest social media thing for teenagers, or like even people in their early 20s.
Got it. Thank you for that. And Lee, what about you? What are your thoughts?
First of all, I don't use TikTok, which I know well. Which TikToks are obviously, you know, you're getting these viral, bunch of much, whatever. So we're gonna skip about TikTok. But social media in general, I kind of use it a lot, but I use it for on the right reasons though. Unless it's something really important for me to use social media, I just don't use it. I mean, social media is okay, but when you're using it, use it at your own risk. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, I would echo that. Just speaking for a lot of young people that do come to Y.E.S, there are a lot of folks that are not on social media, you know, so that notion that young people are just all over the internet, you know, is definitely not true. So just as much as we want to put efforts into finding that, there's not always folks on social media. A best practice that I do want to lift up that we've done at Y.E.S that's been really successful: if you create a group, folks can privately join it, and folks can follow you, but it's really difficult to direct communication. So what we've done on Instagram and on Facebook, and I would love to see if folks have done this on Twitter or other platforms, is create an individual account, like a person, and then friend the individuals in your program. So that if they don't have a phone, if they don't have access to Wi-Fi at the moment, you can send a message to them. When they do hop on, it'll immediately pop up. You can also add all of the folks into a larger group so that you can have bigger group discussions. That's how most of our groups have prospered. So that is something nice. Yeah, I'd just be really curious if anybody else has ideas.
Yeah, I even see young people on Slack now, which I'm like, wow, I thought it was just for like for older people. But you know, everybody's trying out new apps and doing different things now. Christine, you want to mention something?
Yes, Slack and Discord also has been a platform, but that's really after the first contact with youth. And I work with Nick closely, so we do use Messenger as that sort of like connection platform. But Slack and Discord has surprisingly been a really great communication and really like project management resource when it comes to the program itself. I've been really just impressed and pleased with that as like a tool in general for everyone.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that. So hopefully y'all learn some new things. All of the people who are tuning in, you're trying to reach young people for jobs or opportunities, or you might just be trying to learn from them. These are some ways that you can tune in and connect with them. So we have another question in the Q&A that I'll ask. So it says, how do we, well, I'll read some of the first part first, just to kind of frame the question. But John mentions that oftentimes problems with capitalism are framed as workforce problems. For example, conservatives and liberals alike say the solution to hunger, housing, sickness, etc. is jobs. At the same time, other countries have solved these issues with government programs that don't mandate work or proof of work. If you want to end homelessness, give people housing. If you want to end hunger, give people food. If you want to reduce the burden of sickness, give people health care. All right, so the question is, how do we in workforce communicate the idea that everyone should have the opportunity to work without reinforcing the idea that one's ability to survive should be tied to their work? So that is the question. Nick, you want to jump in on that, or Christina?
Yeah, I can take a swing at that. That is a incredible question, and you know, I feel like the comment answers the question. Like we have to push those issues. We have to talk about housing as a human right, healthcare as a human right, food as a human right. If we are continuously seeing that as a radical agenda, then we are letting our society down. We need to start demanding those types of things, and we need to lift that up to politicians, to community leaders, to business leaders alike. So identifying where our stakeholders are, building allyships, building partnerships, and you know, don't get tired of saying the same thing. You know, I had a great conversation with Klaus earlier in this week, where we were both just talking about how difficult it is as you are coming of age to find your voice, and especially if you don't have a lot of identified safe spaces to really have an outlet for that voice. So, you know, choose every moment to represent that cause, you know, and if we all start having that sort of identity, we're all going to be starting to talk very, very differently, and we're going to start to see those things instead of asking for them to happen. That's just my point, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that are tired of hearing me talk, so who knows if I'm right on that one.
I definitely just want to reinforce everything that you just said, and like what I was saying before in the previous questions, that again, our messaging to our employers is always that, you know, like all these other things need to be fulfilled before even, you know, you can hold a job, right? But also that we really need to like consider this in policy making as well, and whether that's legislative changes or what, they need to be advocated for. The other thing is that I hate to put it on this pandemic, but we all know that this has really highlighted all these problems that we all knew, especially those doing this work, existed way, way, way before this pandemic. But I think because the pandemic hits both the have and the have-nots, that this is truly something that impacts all of us, that maybe this is really truly the time that we push this as hard as we can, because the fact of the matter is that we can't rely on our jobs, right? Like this is something that truly, like, we couldn't rely on it before, and now like people are truly hurting because of it. So I think if more than now than ever, like this is our opportunity and our chance to really push that message as much as we can, like ASAP. So I'm just going to put that out there.
And thank you for putting that out there, Christina. And I think a lot of what we've been talking about today, as you mentioned, Nick, has been like problems with people not having their human rights fulfilled. I mean, these topics are literally a part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I remember talking to my students when I was in a classroom about these human rights, and you know, we would talk about different stories of students, not students, but just young people in general, not having certain rights, and when their rights are challenged, what should they do? And, you know, how do you voice your opinion? I remember us working to write letters, even to the police department about ways to end and reduce police brutality in the city. And this is from fifth graders, right? This is from young children. And so I think it's important for us all to be educated about it and continue to work towards that change. So I do have one more question that I would love for our young people to answer that I think is important. And Nick and Christina, earlier, you both talked about ways that, you know, employers can better understand and better work with workforce practitioners, and just things that should just change in general when it comes to the perspective of our employers. But from our young people, Klaus and Lee, I'm curious about what advice would you give employers and even in workforce providers on how they can better support young people? So I'm curious about what your thoughts are now that we have our employers here with us. So I can start with you, Klaus.
So I'm a really big person. I'm a really big individual on understanding. You know what I mean? And there has to come to a certain line where you have to understand that, you know, as the leader of a workforce or an establishment, as an organization, whatever may have you, you are still a human being. You know what I mean? And as a human being, you require. And as you require, you are not the only person who requires. There are other individuals who need the exact same thing. If not at the same capacity, they're still needed as just as much as you do. If it means, you know, on a substantial type of rate, you know what I mean? And that's something that I find commonly, that there is a lack of empathy, you know, for human being to human being rather than employer and potential employee. And I understand that there is a requirement for this line, that this boundary, that you have to see the potential of an individual for a potential employee rather than that of this person needs a job, so I should give them this job. But there is still that understanding of where you yourself should be able to absolve yourself of an expectation of that of an employer, but, you know, look at them from the lens of a person. You should have the expectations from them as a person. You know what I mean? Let's say, for instance, that, as a youth, you had expectations for your caregiver to feed you and clothe you and shelter you. And that was just the expectation of an individual. That's what you expected of your parent. That is not an obligation to them. That is just a human expectation, you feel me? Because that's where our human expectations are. And when you want to look at the next course of, when you look at from the different lens of somebody being in the position of hiring another individual, you want to look at it from that exact same perspective, but you at least want to tilt it a little bit. So you look at it from the different lens of the individual that's sitting in the chair in front of me rather than the person that's sitting in the chair in front of them. You want to be able to look at it from their perspective and see what and why they need or what they need, and see if you can give them that chance, if you can actually spare that slot for them to be able to have that opportunity to make something more of themselves. Don't get me wrong, not everybody is equipped with fleshing out the expectations for these opportunities that are available. Not everyone is equipped for that, but you really necessarily won't know who is equipped for that or who is not equipped for that unless you give them that chance. That's why that goes for that old saying, you never know until you try. They say that for a reason. That is still true today for a reason. You know what I mean? People say these things, these sayings, these quotes, these things like that are recycled through history for a reason, because they are relevant. And why are they still relevant? I don't know, because whether or not we should solve the problem the first time and call it that, and we shouldn't have to go back to the problem again. But unfortunately, us, the human race, we don't quite know that lesson just yet. So the most that we can do is keep trying, you feel me? And until we do get that lesson, until we do get that notion in our head that, you know, we've already solved this 100 years ago and we already know the solution, so we might as well implement it now. You know what I mean? There's just that simple gist that goes down to it. But in the overall like concept of the question here, I say that you have to look at it from a different perspective, because I'm pretty sure at one point in time you were that person that was sitting in that chair that you are now sitting in front of. You feel me? You were that person, and you did want that chance. You required that chance that that employer gave you, or that they may not have given you. But regardless whether or not they gave you that chance then, you have that opportunity now to do the exact same for that individual that's sitting in front of you.
Powerful, powerful. I think it's. I hope our employees are listening. Y'all are getting some jewels today. Lee, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts. If you're an employer, let's say I'm an employee, I'm supposed to have the same respect as an employer. But an employer is not giving me the same respect. Then how I can give you the respect of an employee if you're not giving me the same respect as an employee? Think about that. Because if I am an employee, I'm supposed to get whatever this or that, and not to be taken advantage of. And just because you're an employee, just because you're an employer, that doesn't mean you can run the roughshod over your employer. An employer is supposed to get the same respect as an employee. Because if an employee doesn't get the same respect to an employer, then you only once. Because if you only want the same stuff, the same respect that you give to the employer, it's gonna backfire.
Yeah, I think that notion of respect is essential. So I appreciate you for sharing that. So we are coming to the conclusion. We're going to push to have our panelists just give a closing statement, and then also, if you like, share how people can continue to be in contact with you. This may have been people's first opportunity to learn about Y.E.S, or to learn about Art with the Heart. So how can people learn more about that? So I'll allow some time for some closing. We're going to start with Klause, and we'll go to Christina, and then we'll just keep this thing going.
By all means, by all means. So now this is the part I didn't prepare for. But I definitely do want to say, within the presence of this great conversation, I do want to say thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being a part of the conversation. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your opinions, all of that. Every little bit is what matters. Once again, we've heard that plenty of times. We've heard that a lot over the years, and it obviously still shines true for a reason. You know what I'm saying? Every little bit counts. So every little step that we make to get somewhere is progress, and progress is undisputable. You can't say no to that. So whatever step that we take into the better direction is a step worth taking. And I'm just glad that I was able to be a part of this step that we are able to take together. And so by all means, I guess I'll drop my email if you need me to. But yeah, that's my closing statement.
That's perfect. We'll shift to Christina.
I just want to thank everybody for being here and for listening. And I also dropped my email and our website on the chat, but I really want to encourage you all to talk to Klause, because I think talking to our young people is important and really essential to this conversation, especially now. And just a shameless plug, we also have an online store that you can find on our website. I only say that because that's a whole big part of our workforce development program, is that we sell the items that are created by our participants and we share the proceeds. So it's holiday shopping season, and we had to do everything online for the most part this year because of COVID-19. So our partnership with Youth Empowered Society is helping us make that happen. So just a shameless plug, and thank you again. Thank you to Associated Black Charities. Thank you, Albert. And yeah, it was great.
Thank you. Make sure y'all circulate them dollars with the heart. Nick, you want to go ahead and give your closing statement?
Yeah, absolutely. Just echoing all the thanks for everyone. And shout out to the Y.E.S youth leadership movement. We have young people involved in a variety of organizing and just advocating. And the more partners we have, the more opportunities, the more ways that we can connect young people from Y.E.S to what you all are doing, the more benefits for everyone. So please reach out to me, please reach out to anyone at Y.E.S. Bring us up whenever you can, spread the good word of what the young people are doing. Also just want to say, it's not shameless, Albert, your book is amazing. Everybody cop Albert's book. It's not shameless, Christina, your program is amazing. Buy from Art with the Heart, buy Black, buy local. Race equity in a city like Baltimore is more important than anything else. You know, when we talk about reparative justice, when we talk about doing what's right ethically, we have to step up for each other, and we have to step up specifically for those that need it the most in Baltimore City and our own communities. So just thank you all so much for everything that you're bringing. Lee, Klaus, I know Taylor had to drop off, but you all represent our city so well, and just really, really proud of y'all. Please prioritize wellness. Please take care of yourselves. This is a long struggle that we got ahead of us. It can be a beautiful struggle, but only if we take care of ourselves and each other. Thank you all.
Thank you for that, Nick. Definitely appreciate Taylor for being on as well. Lee, you want to give a closing thought?
I'm not thinking about this through. First of all, Albert and the panel, you guys so amazing, and I'm so blessed to be on this panel. So thank you for allowing me to be on this panel. I mean, I got nothing else to say. That's it. I mean, just come to CUPS, support CUPS as you can, support a local Black-owned business, support the youth. That's it.
Yes, CUPS on East Baltimore, Bel Air Road. Check it out. Great program.
All right, you see, I need to go visit CUPS now. It's closer to me. I went to the original location a few times, but now I got a reason to come back. So I just want to say again, thank you all so much for joining in. This has been a wonderful experience. I'm hoping that you took notes. I'm hoping that you learned a lot. I'm hoping that you really understand the power and the importance of our young people, because they're not just the future, but they are the right now. And so we have to do what we have to do in order to support them so that they can reach their highest potential. So I'm going to pass it over to John, and Nick, like Nick said, is not a shameless plug. Go check out my book, y'allhiring.com. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to John.
Great. Thank you so much to all of our panelists and to our facilitator, Albert, for everything you were able to speak to today. And, this is, not a one-time conversation. Like, these are important issues that we have to continue to talk about. I put in the chat my email if you want to reach out about any of the ABC programs that were discussed today, Community of Practice or Board Pipeline Program. I also put a link to our Mobilize platform, which is like a conversation space where we post articles and talk about books or podcasts that we've read or listened to on race equity and workforce. I also want to say thank you to you all for joining us today and for listening and asking these great questions. This recording of this webinar will be put out soon, as well as there's going to be a survey just to see how this program was for you all and how we can direct our programming in 2021. Thank you again to everyone. That's it.